All right, let's talk about how to teach, well, anything. It doesn't matter if you're in an office, a classroom, or even just trying to show a friend how to do something new. There's a science to doing it effectively, and we're going to break it all down. Let's dive in. So, have you ever had this happen? You are an absolute expert at something. You know it like the back of your hand. But the second you try to teach it to someone else, you just get this blank stare. It's so frustrating, right? You feel like you're speaking a completely different language. Look, it's not that you're a bad teacher or they're a bad student. It's actually a really common cognitive bias. Once we know something, it's almost impossible to imagine what it was like not to know it. Our brain builds this super efficient highway to the answer and completely forgets the long, winding country roads it took to get there in the first place. So let's dig into that idea a little more, this expert's curse. Because honestly, once you understand the problem, you're halfway to solving it.
This points to a pretty surprising idea. A lot of the time, the absolute best person to teach a skill isn't the seasoned pro. It's the person who just learned it themselves. And why is that? It's because they still remember the struggle. They remember all the tricky parts, the confusing bits, and those aha moments. They haven't forgotten the path here.
So why is this curse so powerful? Well, it's not just some psychological quirk. It's actually rooted in the very real physical limits of our brains. Let's call it the brain's bottleneck. Okay, this is probably the most important scientific idea to get your head around here. It's called cognitive load theory. The basic idea is that our working memory, the part of our brain that's actively trying to process new stuff, is super, super limited. So if you try to overload it, nothing gets stored long term. It's literally like trying to pour a whole gallon of water into a tiny shot glass. Most of it's just going to spill everywhere. And just how limited is it? It's kind of shocking, actually. At any given moment, our working memory can only really juggle about 2 or 3 new pieces of information. That's it. So an expert might see a concept as one single easy chunk, but to a beginner, that same concept could be 10 different pieces they're desperately trying to hold on to all at once. We really have to get rid of this idea that our brain is a supercomputer that can just try harder and power through complexity. That's not how it works. The best, most effective teaching works with the brain's natural limits, not against them. So we have to be smart about it. I love this analogy. If you had a huge pile of rocks to move, you wouldn't try to lift the whole thing at once with a tiny wheelbarrow, right? No way. You'd make small, manageable trips. Teaching is exactly the same. We have to break down that giant pile of knowledge into small, wheelbarrow-sized loads for the brain to handle. Okay, so that all makes sense, but how do we actually do that? Well, our first technique is all about building a solid structure, a scaffold, that directly deals with this problem of cognitive load. The big idea here is that you don't just throw the final blueprint at a student and say, good luck. Instead, you give them support beams, a foundation. You build the complex idea piece by piece, and you make sure every single level is stable before you even think about adding the next one. And here's a super simple but really powerful way to think about scaffolding. Just remember these 3 steps. I do, we do, you do. So first, I do. That's where you, the teacher, demonstrate it perfectly. Then, we do. You practice it together. You're right there to give feedback and support. And finally, you do. The student takes the lead and does it on their own, because by then, they don't need that scaffold anymore. But even the most perfect structure in the world needs one more thing: motivation. And our second technique taps into the brain's natural love for challenge and reward by, making learning feel like a game. We can actually borrow a few key ideas from game design to make learning almost irresistible. What does that mean? It means creating clear levels or stepwise progress. It means setting achievable goals and challenges. And it means giving instant feedback, so the learner always knows how they're doing and feels that amazing sense of moving forward. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? Learning and play aren't opposites. In fact, they're naturally intertwined. Think about it. When we're playing, we're in this state of super high engagement. We're actively solving problems and learning new skills without it ever feeling like a chore. All right, our last technique is all about how we deliver the information. It's about shifting our mindset to empower the learner to discover knowledge for themselves, not just passively receive it from us. I mean, it's a rhetorical question, right? The answer is obvious. When you just give someone a fact, it's just information. It sits there. But when you guide them to discover that same fact on their own, they own that knowledge. It becomes meaningful, and it's so much more likely to stick. And this is the fundamental difference. Instead of just stating facts, start asking probing questions. What do you notice here? What do you think will happen next? That forces the learner to really engage their brain, to connect the dots, and to build their own understanding. You stop being a lecturer and you become a guide.
So when you put all these techniques together, scaffolding, gamification, asking instead of telling, it really leads to a huge shift in how we should think about the role of a teacher. This quote introduces a really cool concept called productive failure. And what the research shows is kind of counterintuitive. Letting students struggle and even fail to find an answer on their own first actually leads to deeper, more lasting learning than if you just gave them the solution right from the start. That struggle, the fumbling, the miscues, that's where the magic happens. That's what builds the strong mental pathways. When students have to generate their own ideas, investigate different angles, and sort of wrestle with the problem, they develop a much richer, deeper understanding of the whole topic. So at the end of the day, your job isn't to be this fountain of all knowledge. It's to be an architect of discovery. Your role is to create an environment where it's totally safe to be curious, to ask questions, to try things, and yeah, even to fail productively. So here's a little challenge for you. Think about one thing you're trying to teach someone. How can you stop telling them and start guiding them instead? Remember that little wheelbarrow? Build them a scaffold and spark their curiosity. That's really the heart of it. Now go put it into practice.